Breaking early this morning, acceptance of the presidential election.
Joseph R. Biden Jr. of the state of Delaware has received 306 votes.
President Donald Trump's overnight response.
Another challenge by Missouri Senator Josh Hawley.
We do need an investigation into irregularities, fraud.
His reaction to the storming of the Capitol.
Cleanup at the Capitol begins after glass is broken and offices are trashed. Team coverage this morning of the election protest starts right now.
Live from the KMOV Broadcast Center in downtown St. Louis, this is News 4 with breaking news.
Good morning, everyone. We are following breaking news in our nation's capital this morning. President Donald Trump says there will be an orderly transition of power. We're so glad you're with us on this Thursday morning. Certainly a lot going on. I'm Claire Kellett.
And I'm Maurice Drummond. That statement came just minutes after Congress accepted the Electoral College count in favor of President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris.
The announcement of the state of the vote by the President of the Senate shall be deemed a sufficient declaration of the persons elected President and Vice President of the United States.
No electoral college votes were changed during the counting. Joe Biden received 306 of those votes, while President Trump received 232.
And as Congress finished counting the Electoral College vote overnight, the streets of Washington, D.C. were quiet. This is a live look at D.C., where a curfew was put in place by the mayor just before 5 a.m. St. Louis time. That curfew went into effect at 5 last night.
News 4 does have team coverage of the overnight developments for you this morning. The rioters who overtook the U.S. Capitol building and the latest on the efforts to remove President Trump from office.
We're going to hear from Damon Arnold and Paige Holsey in just a few minutes. But before we get to that, we're going to check in with meteorologist Kent Earhart, and he has been tracking some winter weather as you get ready to head out the door this morning.
Yeah, let's just get you a quick update of what's going on here this morning and what you're going to be facing as you head out for your commute in both the metro and other parts of our viewing area. Pretty quiet in the metro. A little snow falling down to the south. Now, most of this is pretty light, and some of it's not even making it to the ground. However, there is snowfall, and there could be some light accumulations on some of the roads. The temperatures are very near the freezing mark. This is not going to be a big, widespread deal, but you may encounter an icy or a snowy patch in some of those areas like Reynolds and up into Phelps County, or even parts of Iron and southern Crawford County as well. Winter weather advisory expires at noon for Reynolds County, so again, that's where the focus is this morning, but look out in Phelps as well. 34 degrees downtown right now. The winds are out of the east-northeast, so that gives us at 11 miles per hour, so that gives us a feels like or wind chill of 25 degrees. Coming up, the super predictor, we're going to track that snow today and beyond, and also talk about some colder temperatures that's coming up.
The joint session of Congress to count the electoral vote will resume.
That was the moment right there that Vice President Mike Pence called Congress back to order yesterday after our U.S. Capitol was stormed by supporters of President Trump.
And members of Congress were determined to finish the electoral count overnight, even after spending hours locked down at the Capitol that was overtaken by rioters. News 4's Damon Arnold is live in the control room.
And Damon, Congress finished counting those votes just about 2 hours ago.
That's right, Claire. Congress affirmed the Electoral College vote. This after the House joined the Senate in turning aside Republican objections to Pennsylvania's electoral vote for President-elect Joe Biden. Now, it's important to note that this is the second state for which a group of Republicans raised an objection in an attempt to throw out that electoral or the electoral votes. And we know that lawmakers worked deep into the morning hours, where the House voted 282 to 138 against the objection of the Electoral College votes. And while the Senate took a more aggressive approach, shut down with the objection with a 92-7 vote. Now, among those in objection was Missouri GOP Senator Josh Hawley, who is under fire this morning for backing President Trump's claim of election fraud. And it's also, we have one more thing that you should note, and that is the connection here locally, where everything again is unfolding in DC. And that's where 2 of the 4 tellers that read the electoral votes to Congress represent our area, and that's Missouri Senator Roy Blunt and Illinois Congressman Rodney Davis. In the control room, Damon Arnold, News 4.
Damon, thank you for the latest, and a heads up, he is the newest member of our News 4 This Morning team. So glad to have him first day on air. Welcome to Damon. Well, those ballots that Congress finished counting overnight were delivered to Congress in what you see on your screen right here, these wooden boxes. Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley, probably didn't know him before this, but you might know him now, tweeted this photo saying Senate staffers grabbed the ballots as they were rushed out of the chamber. Rioters did get into the Senate chamber, but not the House chamber. Senator Merkley says if they weren't grabbed in time, they would have been burned by the mob. Now, at the beginning of the newscast, we told you that the curfew in Washington, D.C. expired at 5 o'clock here, St. Louis time.
Yeah, but the federal district will stay under a public emergency for the next 15 days. That order extends through President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration.
Now, these are the images that are just, should we say, at the very least, just so shocking for people to really take in. People storming our Capitol. And this morning, police say 4 people are dead in the wake of what many are calling an insurrection.
Yeah, police say that 1 woman was shot and killed inside the Capitol building. The other 3 people suffered medical emergencies. 52 people were arrested in the District of Columbia and 14 officers were hurt during these riots. Laura?
And Mo, this is the moment, you see it right here, that protesters and rioters pushed through the line of officers who are guarding the U.S. Capitol building. You see a violent struggle ensuing, and then officers start running up the steps. Minutes later, though, Trump's supporters start to flood into the Capitol building. You hear the sound of glass breaking as people try to push their way through those locked doors. Protesters were not able to get through those doors, however, but then video shows dozens walking through Statuary Hall. And under the rotunda in the crypt, you see this, rioters and police get into a shoving match with each other. This all happening as both houses of Congress debated the Electoral College vote. Senators were rushed out of their chamber. The mobs of people were able to get onto the Senate floor after it was evacuated. Officials say the Senate floor was cleared of rioters shortly after they made their way in. Over on the other side of the Capitol, in the House chamber, Capitol Police blocked the main entrance with furniture. Protesters, though, broke the glass in one of the doors. Video shows police inside the House with guns drawn. Many of the House members had already been evacuated at this point, but members of the media were still up in the gallery. That's how we're able to get so many of these images. Several congressional offices were also trashed during the riots, including the office of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. This is a viral image making its way all over the world of one rioter sitting at her desk. It is no doubt these images will live in our minds and also the history books for years to come. Right now, the FBI is asking for help in identifying individuals who are actively instigating violence in Washington, D.C.
All right, Laura. As protesters stormed Capitol Hill, the vice president stepped in to make a major decision.
Mike Pence made the call yesterday to send in the National Guard, according to a source very close to that decision. President Trump initially resisted involving Guard members, but Pence went ahead to coordinate the deployment with the Pentagon and to help speed up that move. And new for you this morning, multiple sources say President Trump has banned the vice president's chief of staff from the West Wing. That is where President Trump's offices are located, if you're not familiar. Mark Short was seen on the White House campus on Wednesday, but in Mike Pence's office, which is not located in the White House. Also, according to sources this morning, some of President Trump's cabinet members are talking about invoking the 25th Amendment. That would remove the president from office.
News 4's Paige Halsey, she is live with more. Paige?
Yeah, right now the 25th Amendment is trending online. If you take a look at this Google Analytics page, you can see searches for the 25th Amendment started popping up yesterday afternoon and then peaked last night around 8:30. The 25th Amendment still a hot topic this morning right now on Twitter as well as Facebook and other social media platforms. Now, the Vice President, Mike Pence, avoided any questions about the 25th Amendment as he left the Senate chamber earlier this morning. Again, this is only being discussed in private among a few cabinet members at this point. But the reason why is because after what we saw yesterday, there is concern about what the president might encourage in the final days and weeks of his presidency, as well as national security and how the rest of the world is viewing what is happening right now in our nation's capital. So the 25th Amendment can be used only if the vice president and a majority of the cabinet agree. If invoked, it would make the vice president the commander-in-chief for the remaining days of the presidency. And the 25th Amendment has been used before. It's often used when a president is going in for a surgery and will be under anesthesia and therefore unable to use the powers and duties of his office because of mental or physical illness. But it has never been used under circumstances like this to effectively remove a president for the remainder of his term. Now, to be very clear, though, this has not been formally brought to the vice president as a suggestion to initiate this process. At this point, this is only a conversation, and it is being kept very quiet at this point, but it is certainly sparking a lot of conversation online as well. We'll send it back to you guys.
All right, Paige. Well, the chaos on Capitol Hill is sparking condemnation from leaders around the world. Tweets from world leaders flooded social media. For example, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson tweeting, quote, disgraceful scenes in U.S. Congress. NATO's Secretary General said the outcome of this democratic election must be respected. Americans' allies called it an assault on democracy.
Big story that's been overshadowed by the violence, the shift in power in Congress. Now, the second race in the Georgia State Senate runoff has now been called for Democrat John Ossoff, and Democrat Raphael Warnock had already won his runoff race. So those two victories give Democrats control of the Senate. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, who will also be the president of the Senate, will cast the tie-breaking vote.
We will have team coverage of the election protests continuing all morning long here on News 4 This Morning.
And coming up in our next half hour, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley speaks about the mob of people that stormed the Capitol. But first, Missouri reaches a milestone in its coronavirus vaccine rollout. We asked the governor when more people will be able to get that shot.
Some snow falling over parts of the viewing area this morning. You could run into a slick spot in those areas where you are seeing this light snow. We'll continue to cover that with the radar and the super predictor and tell you how your weekend is shaping up. That's all coming up along with traffic reports on News 4 This Morning after the break.